What's up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of AGR's Pop Culture Reviews. And man, did this thing take forever. I got a little bit bogged down because I did my review of Assassin's Creed Origins. I suppose everybody and their grandmother has already got their Call of Duty World War II review out. I'm just now getting to it, but I didn't want to speed run it either. Now, before we continue, I think it's really appropriate that I'm actually reviewing this game on Veterans Day. And I just want to send a special shout out to everybody who served in the military or wore a uniform. I don't care if it was for a single day and if you were just typing papers or whatever. Doesn't matter. Still, special service should be paid for those who actually served our country. Especially this weekend, we should be celebrating all veterans, regardless of whatever service branch or whatever you did. You guys are heroes. So, it finally happened. I think something that many Call of Duty fans were just clamoring for several years is to go back to their origins, to go back to World War II. I'm certainly happy about it. My introduction into Call of Duty was definitely with the World War II series, and it was freaking incredible. And I'm also an undergraduate of history, so I do study history and have for several years. So this is actually very fascinating to me. You know, one of the things that I love about these shooters is that not only can they give you kind of a fun experience, but it's also kind of a history lesson for those new gamers that are basically learning about history, and especially about World War II. Obviously, any historian worth his soul will know that D-Day was probably one of the most pivotal events of the 20th century. It's probably one of the reasons that we're not all speaking German right now. And if you've played Wolfenstein 2, you'll know what the outcome could have been, which that's actually my next review. In any event, we're all going back to our origins today. We're going back to the very origins of why we love Call of Duty in the first place. So, let's go ahead and get right into it. This is Call of Duty World War II. Now, one of the things that I think is very interesting about this Call of Duty is how un-Call of Duty-like it is, and I'll explain what I mean later. Most importantly, though, in terms of the campaign, it is definitely one of the most story-driven campaigns that I've ever played. And for the first time, I actually remember the names of some of the people that I served with and that I'm on the campaigns with, and I actually give a shit. I suppose this is a combination of two things. The fact that the story is actually very good here, and very emotional, I might add, but also, basically, the number of actors and celebrities that make cameos here. They also got the motion captures perfect, and the voice acting, surprisingly, is very good. These are not caricatures like they've been in the past Call of Duty games. They actually have emotion, and the subtle nuances of some of the things that they say in their dialogue is very impressive, I have to say. This all lends itself to the credibility of the story, and it also attaches you to these characters in a very emotional way. So when things happen to them, you actually feel it. It's a little bit gut-wrenching at times. Not everything is perfect, however, and I noticed this almost immediately. It was very glaring in the opening sequence. Obviously, we start on D-Day, but I thought this was a very big missed opportunity, mostly because there's so many interesting things that they could have gone into in the early years of the war. I mean, there could have been the attack on Pearl Harbor, Tunisia, the Kasserine Pass. I mean, so many things, those campaigns in North Africa that were incredible. I think they could have done this, and unfortunately they didn't, and that's pretty sad. The other thing that really bothered me was basically they kind of copied and pasted what you saw in Saving Private Ryan, right down to the dialogue, the sounds of the weapons, the bullets flying by. I mean, just everything looked like Saving Private Ryan, and I remember seeing this in the early footage when this game was announced, and I thought to myself, wow, that just looks like a computer image or a computer rendition of everything that happens in Saving Private Ryan, and which was a little bit disturbing. And as a matter of fact, you can take scenes from here and match them almost perfectly, almost identically to that film. Even right down to the basic scene where they're using the Bangalore torpedo. I mean, it was like very jarring, and I'm like, man, they better be careful. They might actually get sued for copyright infringement. Now, that small gripe aside, and it is kind of a big one, I have to admit, the opening sequence of this game is very visceral, it is very engaging, and I have to say, kind of frenetic at times. I don't know how many times I died because there was a machine gun just like mowing us down. So I have to say, they recreated it perfectly. The problem is they recreated it a little too well to the film. QuickTime events also make a return here, but unlike previous Call of Duties where you just hit a button, you have to be a little more engaged this time around, which I found was very interesting. Sometimes you can't escape QuickTime events, they're necessary, but I think they made them a lot more interesting and a lot more engaging this time around. And I think the reason these are better is because of the dynamism. You not only have a QuickTime event, but then you also have transition right into an action sequence where you've basically got to save your life. There are also on-rail shooter events as well. Now these are pretty cool. I don't think that they changed anything up or anything like that. Certainly wasn't revolutionary. We've done them in previous titles. I do have to admit, because of the upgrade in the visuals, and especially since I'm playing this on the PlayStation Pro, it is pretty fun and it's exciting. I gotta tell you, it was pretty exciting to be able to shoot down Stukas as they're trying to hit your position. It was pretty cool overall. But again, nothing revolutionary. We've done this before, but still enjoyable. Now, I know large companies like Activision and Sledgehammer Games get a lot of shit these days, sometimes, kind of rightfully so, but I do have to admit that they are socially conscious this time around, and this is one of the first Call of Duty games where I noticed that they do emphasize the importance of minorities serving in the military, which I thought was pretty cool. I mean, it was the first time I've ever seen a Hispanic really at the forefront of the story, and one thing that I thought was really freaking cool is that they also include the importance of how women contributed to the war, especially World War II. Not to mention that they weren't just secretaries and working in offices. I mean, some of them were on the front lines, going behind enemy lines at times, doing these raids and getting involved and getting down in the fight. And I thought that was cool that they highlighted that. It was really interesting, and most importantly, they didn't make this character a caricature. She was a woman, she was a soldier, and she did her duty, and that is freaking awesome. I think one of the criticisms that most people have when they're not actual gamers looking at first-person shooters is that it is a little bit of escapism, myself included. I have commented on this before. But this Call of Duty was excellent, and they didn't stray away from the horrors of war, especially how those horrors extended to the civilians of those battlefields, and I think that was excellent and a great message. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of this review how un-Call of Duty-like this game was, but that is a plus. Now, of course, we have traditionalists, and Call of Duty is traditionally nothing but action and sequence and so forth and so on. But this game gives you enough time to slow down, really understand these characters and the plight of what's going on in World War II. As a matter of fact, this reminded me a lot of tactical espionage games, and some of the sequences were very, very carefully done, and I know a lot of thought went into them. And as a matter of fact, it reminded me a lot of the Wolfenstein games, and if you remember a couple of years ago on the original Xbox, something called Dark Velvet, which was a World War II third-person game, and basically it had a lot more stealth mechanics, which was fantastic. This was a great game. Some of those elements can be found here, and you do have to kind of think a little bit, otherwise you can really mess yourself up, which is a welcome thing for Call of Duty. I think this is a natural and a great progression for this series. Overall, I have to say that this is one of the more enjoyable campaigns that I've played in a very long time in the Call of Duty series, mostly because they got a lot of elements right, especially when it comes to these sequences. Now, did they revolutionize the story modes or anything like that? No, of course not. This is a World War II first-person shooter, but what they did do very well is they made a great story, and a very heartfelt one at that. However, I only have one problem with the story, and that they borrowed way too much from the Spielberg films, and you'll know what I'm talking about. If you remember Schindler's List, you remember the little girl that had the red dress, and she was the only character that had color in the film? Well, they tried to do that here a little bit, and it was a little bit lame to say the least. But you'll see what I'm talking about once you get to that point in the game. Now, of course, we can't talk about Call of Duty without talking about the multiplayer, which is actually pretty good. Now, similar to other multiplayer games, especially the Call of Duty series, you do get to pick different classes. In this case, you have infantry, airborne, mountain, and you also have expedition, and they all have their varying classes and also various abilities, which is interesting. And one of the things that I do love about this first-person shooter, and especially the online component, is that it's steeped in a lot more realism. No more are the days of those freaking easy kills with those stupid jetpacks jumping all over the place like an idiot. This is grounded in a lot more reality, and the first-person shooter is based a lot more on skill than it is stupid easy death kills, which is something that I absolutely love. Now, one of the things that I, kind of noticed here, love it or hate it, whatever you want, is that they did something a little bit different, similar to what they did with Destiny 2, is they made a central hub, or a farm, so to speak. It's basically a base of operations, and similar to other games, this is a place where you could buy things, you can purchase, about those damn microtransactions, of course, but also have the upgrades to the weapons and abilities, changes in uniform, stuff like that. You can also get basic daily drops, stuff like that. So it's pretty cool, and I'm glad that they kind of did this. It looks very interesting. I like to see your avatar. It's really nice to see how you've customized your soldier and you can see him in a third-person perspective, which is always an interesting thing. The maps themselves are actually pretty interesting, though I wish there was a lot more variety, and this is what I was talking about before. If they extended this World War II to earlier campaigns in the earlier days of the war, then I think the maps would be more interesting. You do have the Ardennes, you also have a shipyard, you're actually on a battleship on D-Day, which is pretty interesting, though the main complaint that we have as gamers is that some of these maps are really small, and of course a lot of them have camping areas, and I can't believe it's 2017 and people are still freaking camping, which is ridiculous. They've also made some significant refinements to how you actually get matched up so that you're not getting your ass handed to you by people who are so leveled up and basically experts. So they have ranked matches and then various other modes that they have, which are pretty interesting. The standards always are here though, team deathmatch, etc. But I think these ones are a little bit more refined and they've learned from other Call of Duty titles. Now, the weapons are all great, fantastic, and as I mentioned before, you're not a super duper soldier. This is grounded in a lot more reality. But again, the problem that we always have with Call of Duty is some weapons are so goddamn overpowered, and you all know what I'm talking about, those damn shotguns, which just do an incredible amount of damage. And these ones, in this time around, they actually shoot freaking fire. And imagine that, you're just running around the map with a shotgun and you're racking up kills like crazy because there's no defense against that thing. And to me, it seems like such a game bug, and it really cripples the fun, because I actually got into a match where everybody on the opposing team was just running around with shotguns, and imagine, we had absolutely no chance against that shit. And of course, like with every Call of Duty launch, when I was experiencing the online multiplayer, we did have connectivity issues, and apart from that, we also had some significant lag, and this is why I was getting my ass handed to me. And no, I'm not just making excuses. I've been gaming for a long time, so I consider myself pretty good at online shooters, but this time it was just so glaring. I mean, I would literally see the kill cam, and I'm like, holy shit, my avatar didn't even lift his gun to start shooting, and from my perspective, it totally did. Now, one of my personal favorite things about this Call of Duty series is definitely the zombies mode. It's so freaking awesome. Now, we've had zombie modes in the past, but I have to tell you, there's something extra special, and I don't know what the hell it is, that I guess it's the creep factor of having these zombies in Nazi uniforms and SS uniforms, wave after wave just coming at you. It is so much fun, and here's the thing, guys, you get 4 group of friends to play this mode, and it is probably one of the most amazing thing that you can experience in the Call of Duty, or at least in this title, because you have so much fun. You have coordinated attacks, people help each other out, there is true, and I mean true strategy for the way that you take down these waves and waves of zombies. It's probably one of the funnest things, and I have to say, I actually spent more time in zombie mode than I did in online multiplayer, which is, you know, pretty interesting. The upgrades are there just like in previous titles. They didn't revolutionize anything, they didn't really change it too much, but it is still incredibly fun, guys. Very atmospheric and creepy as shit, I have to say. So overall, it was a really cool thing. Ultimately, guys, I have to say I had a really good time with this Call of Duty. Specifically with the campaign mode, I wasn't as impressed, I have to say, as the online multiplayer. I'm not sure, maybe when they add a little more maps, just a little bit more intuitive, I think I'll like it a little more. I haven't given up on it, it's still pretty fun, but I just wasn't as impressed as I was in previous titles. I am very impressed with the zombie mode, it's just so much fun, and I think it has a lot to do with the fact that you can get 4 friends and really just chow down on these zombies. But I have to say, this is probably one of the most, I guess, engaging Call of Duty stories, definitely the most emotional in terms of the story. Overall, I think they really did a good job. Activision did something really great along with Sledgehammer Games. So I'm hoping to see that they progress in this way. Who knows, maybe they might add other campaigns or even go back and go earlier into the war. That's something that I would definitely love to see. Now, before I go, I just want to thank the folks over at Activision and Sledgehammer Games for sending this wonderful piece over for review. Alright everybody, so that's my official review on Call of Duty World War II. As always, I thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next AGR's Pop Culture Reviews.